They just said the quiet part out loud. They don't want us to own any hardware. In fact, they want us to rent it off them. Check this out.
Was an electric power generator, 100 years old. And because when they wanted to improve the efficiency of their brewery with electricity, there was no power grid. So they had to build their own power station. So they made their own electricity. And at that time, that's what everybody did. If a hotel wanted electricity, they had their own electric generator. And I looked at this and I thought, this is what computation is like today. Everybody has their own data center. And that's not going to last. It makes no sense. You're going to buy compute off the grid. That's AWS.
Right, shut up, Jeff. We're not listening to that. So basically, you just heard what he said there. This is Jeff Bezos, owner of Amazon. Obviously, they own Amazon Web Services, massive cloud compute. It's one of the hyperscalers. There's loads of hyperscalers out there. You've got your Microsofts, your Facebooks, your Googles, all of them. Let's throw Nvidia into this as well. I know they're selling the hardware that's empowering a lot of this, but I think they're going to move into their own sort of data centers and all of that. I mean, you've got GeForce Now, which is their subscription service as well, which has got limits on playtime at the moment, which again is a good example for what I'm about to say. If you do not own your own hardware, then you are at the behest of whatever the hell the platform owner decides to do. Now, you may have already been sort of experienced or exposed, I should say. You have probably experienced this and been exposed to it, is what I'm trying to say. Spotify is a good example of this. If your entire music library is on Spotify, you can only listen to Spotify if you've got an internet connection. I guess maybe you could have downloaded the songs. Maybe that's not the best example. But if your access to Spotify is revoked and or the service goes down, you do not have access to that anymore. Whereas if you own your own CDs, your own records, you can actually listen to that whenever the hell you like because you own it. You are in control of it. That is the big thing here. And again, with hardware, this obviously extends to things like games, and we see bits of this happening already. Most of us have probably got our games on Steam. If Steam goes down, then we can't play our games. When you look at things like single-player games that require internet access, if you don't have internet access, you can't play them. All of this is frustrating. But the fact is, you control your own hardware. You can see my hardware here. This is my hardware. I control this. I can turn this on, provided there's power, and I can do what I like with it, which is great. If all of this is gone, and all I've got is a monitor, a keyboard, and a mouse, and I have to rent compute off Jeff and his mates, well, I'm only going to be able to do that when they deem it necessary to give me that kind of access, let's say, because there may be service outages, there may be issues. But the big kicker here is they absolutely fucking love subscription services at this corporate level. They want you locked in to a subservice where you're paying X amount for, let's say, base level compute. But what happens if you want to play games? Well, there's a gaming package that's going to be a bit more money. And guess what? Do you want to play on high graphics? That's even more money. Oh, you can only play for 10 hours a week. You need to unlock more hours. You see where this is going? They've done it, all these hyperscalers, they all do it with all of their other services anyway. Again, to go back to Spotify, they're not a hyperscaler, but Spotify constantly increase the price of their product. They're not giving you anything extra. They're just increasing the price because they can, because you use Spotify. Netflix does this as well. They increase the price because, well, what else are you going to use? Well, okay, there's other services you could use, but they know they can get away with it, and they do it because they can. And it's kind of like shitification of the platform, making it worse but charging more. And you don't want to give away your hardware futures to that. It is terrible. But there's a lot going on here because AI is the issue with this. And I fear that unless there's a massive, major explosion in the AI bubble, that is a negative explosion, which would take down the economy. So this would be really bad if it happened. All of the hardware is getting sucked up by the data centers because they are paying top dollar to buy it. So there is actually no world where the manufacturers actually get any kind of benefits selling it to consumers because they can sell essentially the same thing for a lot more to a hyperscaler. And even worse is when you look at companies like Micron that produce DRAM, what they are doing is completely getting rid of their consumer production lines and changing them over to the RAM that's required for the AI operations. So there's no going back. And that is terrible because it's taking away stuff. But guess what? I've actually got some more information on, stuff being taken away. Check this out. So this is from December, but I'm going to show you something a bit more recent in a second. When I say recent, literally it was 5 hours ago as of me recording this video. But this is Nvidia. They plan to reduce RTX 50 production by up to 40% in early 2026. And why, may you ask? Well, it's because they don't want to make these cards. They want the resources to make more AI stuff. And look at this section here. Reports from Asian supply chain sources suggest that Nvidia might cut back on making GeForce RTX 50 series GPUs in the first 6 months of 2026, Video Cards reports. According to broad channels, overall supply during H1 2026 could be down roughly 30 to 40% compared to the same period in 2025, although the information remains unconfirmed. The report points out that the issue is not entirely related to GPU RAM alone, but also to tight availability across GDDR6. I'm going to get really confused there. GDDR7 and other memory components, including motherboard-related memory such as DDR5 and DDR4. Board channels also claims that Nvidia may adjust allocation strategies for add-in board AIC partners in mainland China to better align supply with changing DIY market conditions. So this is Hardware Unboxed. Fantastic channel. Link to all this in video description below. But just listen to what he says. Listen to this.
The RTX 5070 Ti is end of life. The RTX 5060 Ti 16GB is almost done as well, and things are looking pretty bleak across the graphics card market. Since returning from CES, we've had a few chats with AI.
This is actually shocking for them to be, stopping production of new generation cards because it is not worth it to them to produce them because they're too busy feeding the AI hyperscalers because, again, they're paying tens of billions of dollars for this insane hardware to run all of their AI models. So what about this? So this is from Video Cards. This is from January the 14th. In China, DDR3 motherboards see a 2 to times 3 sales jump. I've got to remind you guys, DDR3 is like 15 years old. This is ancient technology. And yet people are being forced to fall back onto this because of the exorbitant and like excruciatingly high price of especially DDR5 RAM at the moment, because it is just ridiculously expensive because, again, all of the production is being pushed towards AI hyperscalers and they are paying ridiculous amounts of money for this, which is fueling the, well, I guess, AI data center boom in some cases. So what do I think is going to happen here? If the current AI build out continues, what we're going to see is hardware become more and more expensive. We're going to go into a sort of phase where it's going to be a luxury to own your own PC at home and your own hardware. And what will happen is the majority of people will be forced to use subscription services which plug into these massive compute data centers. Because remember, when I'm saying AI data center, yes, it is a data center that's used to process AI, but it can literally do everything else. You've got to think on some level, not every data center is like this, because some use processing units called TPU, which are tensor processing units, which are basically designed for inference, which is when you do a like, say you're speaking to ChatGPT or whatever, when you talk to it and it generates a response back to you, that's inference. It's not actually training the model, which is what GPUs are really good for, although you can use TPUs for that as well, but I don't think they're as fast. Whatever, it's getting too technical for me. It's going to make my brain explode. But what I'm saying is these data centers, the majority of them are extremely powerful. They've got insanely powerful GPUs in them, tons of RAM, loads of storage, massively fast CPUs as well. The system is insane. It can do basically everything. And given how fast internet speeds are now, yeah, I'm sitting at home here and I've got 2 gig up and 2 gig down. In fact, I could upgrade to 5 gig up and 5 gig down. That's just insane, right? Yeah, latency may become an issue, but if the data center is local to the UK or somewhere in Belgium, which it probably is, then it's going to be marginal, right? You should be able to play most games and not really have an issue with that. So you can see if this becomes a case of, well, actually, it's going to be $50 a month, you get your ultra high-end PC that you can log into and play at any time you want. That sounds like a great deal, right? And in theory, they could start adding things like Game Pass into this. And I'm sure Microsoft will do this. And we've already got systems like this anyway, where you can play them over the internet. Like I said, Nvidia GeForce Go is a similar thing. I remember Stadia back in the day. That, again, was a similar thing with subscription-based services, although the hardware wasn't there at the time. The difference now is the hardware is there. But what is happening is these companies like your Nvidias, your AMDs, your Microns of this world that were making, and even your Samsung, who was literally the biggest storage manufacturer and RAM manufacturer. It may just be the biggest RAM manufacturer, maybe not so much storage. But even like your Western Digitals and your Seagates, and your SanDisks that are making storage, they don't want to sell you an SSD. They want that SSD to go to a hyperscaler because they're making a special type of SSD for AI data storage, because there's a lot of read and write going on with AI. And there is a ton of storage used with all the stuff that AI generates. So what's happening is, because of that pressure, because of that demand, these manufacturers are no longer willing to service the consumers because the money just isn't there compared to these massive hyperscalers who like rock up and go, well, we'll spend, I mean, this would be just one of them. We'll go, we're going to spend 50 billion this year on what they call CapEx, which is capital expenditure. That's great, right, for them, because it's great because most of that's going to Nvidia and all the other partners that are producing the hardware for them to build their data center. The problem is this is ramming the price up for us. And like I said, crucially, it is getting rid of those production lines which would have been used to make consumer grade stuff. Though they don't exist anymore, we know they've been removed at Micron. So they're not going to go back and suddenly fire up a consumer line to make consumer RAM. They're going to keep pumping the RAM into the data centers. So there is a very real danger here that the world we're going into, the hardware compute, the power of the hardware is going to be in those massive data center buildings, and you'll have to pay a subscription to get access to it because no companies are simply making hardware for you to buy. Even if you've got the money to buy it, it just won't exist because there's no point. There wouldn't be enough of a market. Now, this falls on its face as an argument if the entire AI complex collapses. Now, this would be an existential crisis for the economy, right? This video seems like it's getting quite hard hitting, but it would be a massive crisis because it would wreck the economy of the world. It wouldn't just be the American economy goes down. If the US economy ever went down, it would take every other economy with it because of its sheer size. But the nature of this beast is everybody is all intertwined, inter-invested, and it is a massive network that is basically propped up with the promise of AI. Now, I believe, and I've said this, I'm on record saying this before, AI it should be fantastic, right? It should be this tool we can use for like incredible things, drug discovery, curing diseases, curing cancer, new treatments. You know, I've got a condition called ulcerative colitis. I'd love it if they could work out how to get rid of this shit. I don't want it no more, and we haven't been able to do it so far. I take medication and it works well, but I don't want it, right? Maybe AI could be the sort of key that unlocks that. I seen a crazy thing recently, which I think actually was AI generated, but I like the notion of it. It could maybe potentially learn how we could speak to animals. So there was a bird chirping and the AI is trying to work out what the bird is doing. And maybe in the future, an AI could work out and we could communicate with birds, for example. That kind of stuff would be insane. That's what I want. What I don't want are stupid chatbots that nobody cares about and that kind of thing. And I do think LLMs and chatbots have kind of reached their limit. We're going to need to go ahead from that and maybe go into these like fanciful things I've just outlined. But what is happening at the moment and what is very clear is hardware prices are going to increase. Now, for us as gamers and for people that enjoy having our own hardware, this means prices are going to increase. Now, the only way this is going to stop is if they suddenly don't need any more hardware for AI because maybe AI becomes so efficient it doesn't require massive amounts of computer hardware to run, in which case that would force these companies like your Nvidias, your AMDs, your Microns to go back to actually producing the consumer grade stuff that they were known for. That could maybe happen. I think on the flip side, what's going to happen is we're still seeing this massive expenditure on AI because nobody's really reached that critical mass. And I don't think they know if they just need more power or better algorithms or better models to reach that. You see a lot of places talking about artificial general intelligence. Now, I think that's a very long way away. That would be the idea of this artificial super intelligence is a different thing, but general intelligence would be sort of like an expert in everything, all of the time, all together. So you'd have this incredibly fantastic tool that would give you the answers to everything. We're nowhere near that. Now, if that happens, and to make that happen requires more hardware, then we're going to continue to see this cycle of hardware getting faster, but getting more expensive and being tailored towards data centers, which cuts us out of the equation altogether. So we could be moving towards this hellscape of we don't own hardware anymore. We're locked into subscription systems, which also means they can monitor absolutely everything you're doing. They can decide to turn things on and off at will. And I'm sure a lot of companies like your Nintendos of the world would love to do that. And they would just have full control of whatever you're doing on your hardware, because literally all your hardware would be is a screen and some sort of input device. Beyond that, it would all exist on the cloud. And I think that is very worrying. All right, guys, this video has been a bit of a, I don't know, it feels like a bit of a rant, but I am really interested in AI and its potential impacts. That's probably why I wanted to put this video together, but it is having some severely bad impacts on things which are going to affect us as gamers, which I'm not really, it's really worrying to me. I don't mean for this video to be like, oh my God, it's like some doomer video, oh, everything's going to collapse, but it is very worrying at the moment. Anyway, let me know what you think about this in the comments below, guys, and if you enjoyed the video, then do subscribe to the channel. And I've been Stylosa, and I'll catch you a little bit up on the next one. See you soon.